Hi, this is Billy Ariel, Real Life. I'm here in the Resistance Studio on this Friday. There are a few of us here doing office work and the like. I received a call this morning while I was in my office from one of my friends and an associate that I and the team all know, and that is P.S. Montgomery. And I haven't talked to her, and the team hasn't talked to her since, wow, a little bit around January or February of this year. But she called, and she and I did a lot of catching up to, via conversation, and then after that, she told me that she had a friend of hers who wanted to speak with me. And I said, okay, a friend of yours? And she said, yeah, but Billy, any friend of mine is a friend of yours as well. So really, a friend of ours wants to speak with you. So I said, okay, all right, well, let me talk to her. And her friend's name is Shelley. Well, at least that's what P.S. Montgomery said, that's what she wants to be known as. And so I said, hi, Shelley, this is really RL. What's going on? And so she told me about how she had this very harrowing experience. And she had already shared this experience with PS. And well, I'm going to call her Montgomery. Everyone knows her as PS Montgomery, but I call her Montgomery. She had already shared her harrowing experience um, Miss with Montgomery, but she also wanted to share the harrowing experience that she had with me as well. And I said, well, why me? And so she said, because Billy, just as people listen to P.S. Montgomery, I know that they definitely listen to you as well. And, you can reach a lot of people. And so I said, well, hold up now, Will. I reach a lot of people just because I'm telling the truth. Don't put me on a pedestal. And so she said, well, I'm not putting you on a pedestal, but I need this experience to get out. And I want you to tell it to your people. And so I said I would. And so she began to tell me her experience, and I was blown away. And so I'm going to tell you all what she told me in regards to her experience. So Shelly has a teenage daughter. Shelly said her teenage daughter was 18, and they had moved from the West Coast to the East Coast to, get a brand new fresh start on life and all of that. And um, so she went on this website called Furnish Finders, and Furnish Finders is a site where you can search for rooms to rent, houses to rent, and all of that. And so she found this room for rent in Henrico, Virginia. And so she thought, she researched about Henrico, and she found out that Henrico was a good place to live. And so she decided to contact the man who owns the house. His name is Vernon James. And so when she contacted him, she found out if the place was still available, and he said it was, and they began to talk about, the place and how the room was. And then Shelley said she told this joke. She said, well, now I have a small pet, have a small little Yorkie. Do you accept pets? And so Vernon James said, no, no, we don't accept any pets here. No, no pets. And so Shelley said, are you sure? Because it's just a small miniature Yorkie. And so Vernon said, no, no pets allowed here. And so Shelley said that she, laughed and told Vernon James, Mr. James, because that's Mr. Vernon, that's what she called him, Mr. Vernon. Mr. Vernon, I was just kidding. I wanted to see where you were coming from in regards to whether you actually had pets or not. And so, he said, "Oh, could you? Yeah, well, no, we don't have any pets here, no." And so, Shelley said that that was a good thing for her and her daughter because they both have, asthma, and they can't live with pets. And so, once again, Brennan James told her not to worry because there were no pets there. And so they had their belongings to be shipped over by UPS. It was this cheap. And then they, flew over to, the Henrico, Virginia. And when they got there, Shelley said the first thing that stood out to her was Vernon James asked if there were any males that were going to be living on the property with her. And so Shelley said she found that to be odd because she had told Vernon James on the phone that it would just be her and her daughter. So why was he asking if there were going to be any males living on there on the premises with her? And so she said, no, it's just me and my daughter. And then he asked again, now, you sure there's not going to be any males living here? And again, she found it odd because she had already given him an answer on the phone and now mm, in person. And so she said, Mr. Vernon, I've already said there's not going to be anyone in the room but me and my daughter. Now I'm very tired. We just came off of a plane. My daughter's tired, and the daughter reiterated what Shelley said. And they said, Shelley said she told Mr. Brennan James, uh, we want to just get to our room and go to sleep. And so Shelley said when Vernon James realized that, hey, she's shutting me off in conversation, he went on back in his room and she went on to her room with her daughter. And so Shelley began to say how the house was made up. You had, you walked into the house and immediately you were in what Vernon James called a common area. And we all would call the space when you walk into a house, especially a Rambler house. Most Rambler houses, when you walk into a Rambler house, you walk straight into the living room. Well, Shelley said that Vernon called the living room the common area, and then in the common area there was a small microwave and a like a pizza bake oven, and it was an old refrigerator. And Shelley said she knew it was old because they had door handles on both sides, and it only opens up one way, but it had handles on both sides. And it was, the freezer at the top of the refrigerator at the bottom. And then right next to that was the entryway to the kitchen where Shelley said there were like these brown shutters that separated the kitchen from the common area. Then in the kitchen, you had the bigger microwave, the sink. Um, this Vernon James had two big refrigerators, and then there was another entryway to a back room, and that's where Vernon James slept and resided at. And that area was closed off with two double doors. And so that night, Shelley said her and her daughter went to sleep, but they kept itching. They kept itching all over, and they didn't understand why they were itching. They thought, well, maybe it's because of the fact that, their skin was dry and maybe, they had taken a shower before they had laid down, but maybe they thought that they didn't take that long of a shower. So what they did was the next morning they got up and, Shelley took her shower and then her daughter took a shower. And when they pulled back the sheets to make up the bed, that's when they saw the sheets were stained with blood. And it was dried blood. And Shelley said that she was upset because she and her daughter had slept all night on these blood-stained sheets. And so she went to Vernon and said, Mr. Vernon, there's dried up blood on these sheets. And he acted, he was I didn't know what was going on and when how it got there, and then he just, basically said, "Oh, do it? Oh, okay," and he went back in his room. He didn't even give a response. So Shelly said she did what she put on some gloves, her and her daughter, and they took the sheets and they washed it with Clorox because the sheets were white. So they washed it with a Clorox, Pine Sol, and a lot of cleaning products to really sanitize the sheets. And then she folded it up, put it in the closet. And because Shelly said Vernon had a closet where you could get like sheets for the bed. So she, after washing the sheets, she folded it up, put it in the closet, and got new sheets. And she said she and her daughter looked at the sheets before putting on the bed, and those were clean. So then because Shelly did say that she told Vernon James that she was really clean, extremely, extremely clean, and that she couldn't stand filth or dirt or bacteria. And she said one of the things that struck her as odd was that Vernon James wanted to charge a $50 cleaning fee. A $50 cleaning fee. And so um, she thought it was odd because when her and her daughter got there, the room that they stayed in, it wasn't clean. There were cigarette butts on the floor, dirt and dust all underneath the bed, dust on the shelves. It was a dirty room. And so she thought that was weird that she had to pay a cleaning fee for a place that wasn't clean. But what she did, she and her daughter had used Instacart and ordered some cleaning supplies, and they cleaned that room from top to bottom, swept, pine sol, mopped underneath the bed because Shelley said that was the only way that she could be able to stay in that room. Her and her daughter was with the room being clean. But then on top of that, the other thing was that the bed that they were staying in was too small. Now, you want to go back and say too, when Shelley talked to Vernon James on the phone, Vernon had her under the assumption that the place was clean. The place was clean, it was spotless, it was immaculate, and she didn't realize till the next day that that was a lie. But what could she do? Because she had already given the money, so she couldn't sit there and say, well, we're going to leave because she already given her money, basically all the money that she had. Um, because she was a school teacher. And so she had to just, well, I'm going to stay here and make the best of it until I can, do better. So they cleaned the room from top to bottom, as I said, but then the next dilemma was that the bed that her and her daughter stayed in was extremely small. I mean, two people could not fit in that bed unless one of the people sleeping in the bed was an infant. Two fully grown people cannot sleep in the bed. And a lot of times, Shelley said that when she and her daughter would sleep in the bed, her daughter would fall on the floor because of the fact that there was not enough, and the bed was just too small. And so one day while Vernon James was at work, because they had their own bathroom that was across the hall from their room. And so one day, Shelley and her daughter, they thought they were going into a closet, but they opened the door that they went into another closet to see if he had any, um, it was certain bathroom cleaning supplies that Shelley and her daughter hadn't gotten. And so what the door that they opened was to an additional room. And this room was bigger. It had a queen size bed because the room that Shelley and her daughter were in was a twin size bed, despite Vernon James advertising it as being a queen size bed. It was a twin size bed. But this other room was bigger and it actually had a queen size bed. You could walk around the room. It had two windows where the room that Shelley and her daughter was in only had one window. And so when when Shelley and her daughter saw that room, they said, this room was bigger. So they asked Vernon James, can we change rooms? Because we saw that room, no one's staying in it, and it seems to be bigger. And, if that room was for rent, how much is it? And so he said, well, it's the same price, but I would prefer you all to stay in this room. And so we were saying, yeah, but this room here, Shelly said, this room here is, the bed is too small for me and my daughter. And it's like we can't breathe in this room because there was only one window. And, there's only one window. And, you really don't have any room to walk around, whereas the other room you do. And so they kept, verbally putting on the pressure, the room is at plumbing bucket, and so finally Vernon said, well, okay, well, all right, we're going. And so they decided to move because at that time their things from UPS had finally come over. So they decided to move their things from the smaller room to the other room. Now, across from them was this white young guy. He had the room right across the hall from the larger room that Shelley and her daughter were moving into. And so, this guy here, he worked at nighttime. And when Shelley and her daughter met him, was introduced, because he introduced himself to Shelley and her daughter. Otherwise, if he hadn't done that, from what Shelley said, Vernon would have never let her know that there was anybody else living there. So when he introduced himself to Shelley and her daughter, this is how Shelley found out that he worked that night, and he came home around 9 in the morning, and it was at that time that her and her daughter found out that he has two cats, two big cats. And so, Shelley tried to play it off. She didn't want to say, "Oh, you got cats with them," what? So she said, "Oh, okay, all right." So he told her, "Yeah, but the cats, they stay in my room, and when I come home from work, I mean, as soon as my head hits the pillow, I'm asleep and all of this, and I'm from Tennessee and all that, and all of that." But and he was okay for the most part from what Shelley said. So, um, Shelley and her daughter, when they moved into this room, that's when they noticed that there was an excessive amount of smoking and vaping, particularly coming from Vernon. But the vaping that Vernon James was doing, from what Shelley said, it didn't smell like the regular vaping, like he. Um, and when Shelley said this, it made me think of Alex, because Alex used to vape too, but we got him to kick that habit. But when we used to smell Alex vaping, it would be like a cinnamon type of flavor and so or smell. And so I asked Shelley if that was the smell that she was smelling. She said no, it was a different type of smell. This strong, this, and she couldn't explain it other than it was a strong, repulsive smell. And so she said that the young white guy who was living across the hall from her, he was smoked, but he would smoke cigarettes, but you could smell it in the halls, and even though he was in his room, the smell would come from underneath his door and underneath her door and to her and her daughter's room. And so that would bring on their asthma, from what Shelley said, all the time. And Shelley said that her and her daughter would go back and forth to the hospital. And one of the things Shelley did say was that she did ask Vernon James as well if there was any smokers in the house, and he said no one smoked. So Shelley said this is the second lie that Vernon James had told to her before her and her daughter got there. And then she noticed how this Vernon James, he liked to keep the house dark, day and night. It could be bright, sunny day outside, and you all should know if you're in a house or wherever you live, if it's a bright, sunny day outside, even if you have the curtains open, the light will come in. But a lot of people, depending on what type of curtains you have, even with the curtains closed, if they are light curtains, the light will come in from the outside. And then in the night, in the evening time, you have people who will turn on the living room light or the dining room light or the side table light or something like that. But this Vernon James man, he wanted to, Vernon James, he wanted to have the house dark all the time. In the daytime, Shelley said the curtains had to stay closed, and they were black curtains that shielded the light from the outside from coming inside. So, so uh, during the daytime, it would be dark, as if it's nighttime out, inside. We're outside, coming inside. It would be dark. You couldn't see anything in the common area in the daytime because with the dark curtains closed, it left the whole common area and even the hallway, it left it dark. The kitchen area where the stove and the big microwave and the sink was, well, he had a window there. I mean, he would have the blinds open, but even with him having the blinds open, there was a dark, from what Shelley said, there was a dark, just dimness to the kitchen, despite the fact that he would have the blinds open. And then at nighttime, he would not have any lights on in the house whatsoever. And Shelley said that she and her daughter found that to be, unsettling because a lot of times when they would come home, they would have to feel their way around for several minutes for the light switch, and it was hard for them to walk from their room to the bathroom and from their room to the common area because the house was just pitch black dark. And so what Shelly and her daughter started doing was they started leaving on the porch light at night so that because even the outside of the house was dark. I mean, with how dark it was on this street, and with Vernon not having his porch light on, the house was so draped in darkness that if you walked or drove by, you would not know anything was in that area at all. No house was in that area at all. So Shelley and her daughter said they wanted to, and they did start leaving the porch light on. But what Vernon James did was Vernon James unscrewed the bulb from the porch so that no porch light could be on. And so when Shelley and her daughter went to ask Vernon, Mr. Vernon, why is it that the house is always dark? We had a porch light on, and you took the bulb out of the porch light. Why? What's going on? And so Vernon told them, oh, it's because I like to keep the house dark. And that was all that Shelley said he said about it. And so again, but Shelley had already given, Shelley and her daughter, they had already given the rent to Vernon. So, it's not like they could say, okay, well, we're going to pick up and get out of here because they had already given him money. So, and they hadn't started, work yet. So they had to wait essentially until they started working because Shelley said her daughter was working at the school with her since her daughter was 18. So they had to wait until they started working to get a paycheck, and then they could go ahead and, take that money and get out. So they just decided to grin and bear it until, that paycheck came from their job. But then they started noticing that he had cameras everywhere. This man had cameras on top of the refrigerator. He had cameras in the kitchen. He had cameras on the front porch. He had cameras in the hallway, cameras in the behind the closed doors of the laundry area. And Shelley and her daughter said they believe, well, Shelley said that she and her daughter believed that he even had cameras, secret cameras in their bathroom, the bathroom that was only for them to use. And so with that, Shelley said that her and her daughter were being watched everywhere. They couldn't make a move in their house without them being watched. He even had cameras watching who came in and out the front door. He had chimes on the door that said door open, and Shelley says she didn't understand that because of the fact that why would you need chimes on the door? I mean, that's what a home alarm system is for. But from what Shelley said, uh, Vernon told her, even though he had a home alarm system, he had chimes on the door to let him know when people, well, her and her daughter, were coming in and out of the house. There were chimes on the window, on the windows, well, the windows in her and her daughter's room. So whenever she opened the window, he would get a notification that the window was open. And so Shelley and her found that to be really odd because it was if he wanted to be notified of her and her daughter's every move. Then Shelley said there were times when they would come out of the bathroom, either her or her daughter, from taking a shower, from using the bathroom, period. And they would see him peeping from out of the kitchen through the shutters, because it was wooden, like bamboo shutters, peeping through the bamboo shutters at them as they were coming out of the bathroom. One time, Shelley said she was in her towel and she had just came out of the bathroom taking a shower, and she happened to look, and there he was, peeping through the bamboo shutters, just staring at her. And so that made her feel really uneasy because um, I mean, she is coming out of the shower and there he is. I mean, she had a towel wrapped around her, and there was no reason for him to be at that end of the hallway because at the that end of the hallway where her and her daughter's bathroom was only her and her daughter's bathroom, her room, and the room where this young white guy stayed at. And from what Shelley said, this young white guy, he never came out of his room unless it was to leave out of the house or to come back in the house. So she didn't have to worry about him, coming out of his room when she and her daughter were coming out of the bathroom from taking the shower. So essentially, she and her daughter had that whole end of the hallway to themselves because the laundry room area was further up the hallway. And so, um, the fact that as she was coming out of the bathroom, going across to her room, and he was peeping. It wasn't as if he was, oh, I'm coming into the hallway and I see you, my bad. No, he was peeping out at her. So she found that to be really, creepy and pervertish, and all of that. And and then she said there were times when she and her daughter would go into the kitchen, because a lot of times the small microwave, it wouldn't work. And so, and if it did work, there were hazards of danger in there because of the fact that there was water all in the microwave that she and her daughter didn't put in there, but that she said that she believed Vernon James put in there. So they would go and use the microwave in the kitchen, the bigger microwave in the kitchen, and Shelley said that kitchen was horrible. I mean, that kitchen was dirty as heck. You had food all on the stove. The rags that Vernon James was using to wipe off the table and to wash the dishes, they were dirty and stained, and the whole that the kitchen utensils were dirty. He had hard where in with spoons and forks and drawers, and Shelley said that the whole kitchen was a bacteria just waiting to happen. And so what Shelley said she and her daughter decided to do was, okay, well, we're going to go out there and buy our own utensils. We don't want to use his utensils because Vernon said that any in a kitchen was available for them to use, the spoons, the cups, the forks, the plates, and all that, but the pots, the pans, but all of his utensils were dirty. And you wash them, but a lot of them were permanently stained with dirt and grime and all of that. And so Shelley said to eliminate all of that, she just decided to buy her and her daughter decided to buy their own pots. She bought two pots, one she said, a pan, and about 10 uh, strong, sturdy paper plates, from what she said, and some utensils, and they decided to use that. And so, but even when they would go into the kitchen, um, Shelley and she said to her and her daughter, they would have to be careful with how they touched the counters, the stove, because it was just grimy, stained, dirty. Even the floors had trash on it. There were food particles on the floor. One time, Shelley said her daughter was washing dishes and a moth flew up from out of the garbage disposal. And so, they tried to not use the kitchen as much as possible because of the fact that number one, one Shelley said they were clean, and number two, they had to remain sanitary in everything they did because of the fact that, from what Shelley said, her asthma and her daughter's asthma counted on it. And because of the fact that Shelley herself said that, she had this obsessive cleaning um, thing to her. I don't want to call it a disorder because it's not a disorder. But it's from what Shelley described it as, it was an obsessive cleaning um, thing that she had. That's I was, the Shelley said it, the obsessive cleaning addiction, but I don't even want to call it an addiction. I'm going to call it a thing because it's not an addiction because I mean, who wouldn't want a clean house? So but so because of all of that, they decided to start washing their dishes and all of that, and the bathroom sink that was in, the sink that was in their bathroom, because that was cleaner than that kitchen. I mean, even the sink was dirty. And so then there were times when Shelley said there were times when her and her daughter would be in the kitchen or in the common area, or just walking up the hallway from the laundry room area to their room. She said there were times when Vernon James would just sneak up on them. One time when they were in the kitchen, and when they were using the kitchen, you know, uh, he would bust open the double doors to his living area and just come out there. And it would, what Shelley said, it would scare her daughter. And when it would scare her daughter, Vernon James would say, "Oh, did I scare you?" And then start snickering. And so Shelley said she believed that he was doing it on purpose because it was happening again and again and again. And so Shelley said that her and her daughter, they didn't take too kindly to that at all because of the fact that it kept happening. And it was like he was doing it on purpose to try to elicit fear from them to him, or, for them to fear him. Then Shelley said how she began to take notice how several times Vernon James would walk around in his boxer underwear. And she said she found that to be, you know, uh, uncomfortable and not appropriate because there were times when every now and then, from what Shelley said, there were times when the young white male, he would come out of his room and he would maybe go and sit on the porch to talk to whoever he was talking to. And when he would come out of his room, anytime he would come out of his room, he had to do laundry. He would be fully dressed, and not fully dressed as if he's going outside, but he would have on maybe his jeans and a t-shirt. He would never come out in his boxers, but Vernon did several times. Boxer underwear. And so I did ask Shelly, I said, "Why do you know it was boxer underwear? And are you sure you're not confusing it with shorts?" And so she said, "No, uh, Billy, I know that it was boxer underwear because of the fact that boxer underwear have that little hole so that men can pull their penises out and urinate. Whereas regular shorts, you have to unbutton it or zip it down and then pull it down and what have you." And so she said that whenever Vernon James walked around in his boxer underwear, it would make her and her daughter uncomfortable because it was basically like a man walking around in his rolls. And so she said one time that Vernon James was at the laundry room area, and Shelley said her daughter was coming out of her room through, her and her daughter's room. They were coming out. Shelley's daughter was coming out of their room to go to the bathroom, and right then Vernon tried to start up a conversation with her, and she had a conversation with him, but she noticed that every time Vernon was talking, he was trying to move in a way whereas Shelley's daughter could see his loose and dangling genitals um, in his boxer underwear. And he was moving in a way like that on purpose. And so, Shelley said her daughter was, disgusted by that, and she told her mother, Mr. Vernon, the way he was moving, it was like he was trying to get me to see, his junk. And so Shelley said when her daughter told her that, she automatically knew why he was doing that. He was trying to get her, her daughter to see, his penis moving, hoping that it would entice her, hoping that it would, excite her. And so, um, when Shelley went to talk to him about it, Mr. Vernon, my daughter said that you in your boxer underwear and and the way you were moving was in a way whereas it seemed as if you were trying to get her to see, your genitals, and she was kind of uncomfortable about it, and so Shelley said she tried to talk to him about it, but the more that she tried to talk to him about it, the more he remained elusive, as if he was elusive and dismissive, as if he didn't want to talk with, yeah, well, well, I was just trying to get the laundry to church. He was just making up excuses and remaining, for the most part, elusive and divisive before retreating back to his room. So, Shelley said that she asked this Vernon James, she asked Vernon James, um, Mr. Vernon, why would you want to walk around in your boxers in the first place? Because you're not living alone. You have a woman and her daughter here, and then you have a guy across the hall, and none of us are your family. We're strangers, we're tenants. Why would you want to walk around like that? But again, he remained really elusive and dismissive, as if he basically didn't want to give her an answer. And so, as the time went on, she um, she said how her and her daughter uh, they ended up losing the job that they came over there for. And so they had to start the whole process all over again of trying to find new jobs and all that. And that made her and her daughter have to stay a little longer because, they couldn't just pick up and leave because they didn't have the funds to leave because most of the places that Shelley said were in Richmond, other places where she could have rented from, they were higher in rent, and she didn't have that. Her and her daughter, they didn't have that because again, they had job that they had, it collapsed, and so they had to find new work. And until they found new work, they didn't have the money to get um, someplace else. And there weren't a lot of rooms for rent in Richmond, from what Shelley said. It's mostly condos and apartments and homes for rent, and I believe in a lot of homes, but it's mostly apartments and condos for rent, and some townhomes. Um, and so, um, her and her daughter had no other choice but to continue to stay there until her and her daughter found a new job, and then they can go on from there. And so while they were there under Vernon's smoking and vaping, and this young white guy, because he was smoking too. And at first, the young white guy was smoking only on the porch, but then he started doing it in his room. He started doing it in his room. And sometimes he would, you know, with a cigarette in one hand, he would come out into the hallway and do the laundry, which means the smoke was filtering into Shelley and her daughter's room. So with that being the case, um, All of that was making their asthma go haywire. And as I said, they were going back and forth to the hospital, back and forth to the hospital. It was just, that their asthma was going severely bad with coughing and headaches and all of this. And around the third day, and I should go back and say this, around the third day of them coming there, because they didn't get to see it really on the day that they came. Because when they came, from what Shelley said, when they came that day, it was getting close to nighttime. So they really didn't, and they were tired as it is already. So they really didn't, as it was, they really didn't get a chance to really look around at the place and see if it matched the pictures that Vernon had sent to them. But around the second or third day, because the second day they were busy trying to get things unpacked into their room and all of that. But the third day was when they started noticing how the house was. Whereas there were spider webs on the walls, on the ceilings, trash and rat turds, mice turds underneath the tables because Vernon, from what Shelley said, had mice and rats. Either I think Shelley said either mice or rats. It was either or. She didn't know which one, but she knew that he had either one because their water, their jugs of water, which they would keep in their room, little bottles of water, was bitten into, and while it was sitting on the floor. So um, Shelley said she didn't know if he had either mice or rats, but it was one of the two. And so they would see the turds, and the Shelley said they were big turds, which made her think that they were rat turds. Um, they were on the floor. Um, there was just on the porch, from what she said, there were flying spiders, crawling spiders, iguanas. Um, there was spider webs. There were German roaches. And if you know anything about Virginia, you know what a German roach is. German roaches are popular in Virginia. There were German roaches here and there. There were cockroaches. I mean, that front porch was filthy. Even on the windows, there was spider webs on the windows. Spiders. I mean, these were fast moving spiders crawling on the outside of the windows. So a lot of times, Shelley said her and her daughter they wanted to sit out on the front porch, because it was a nice area, whereas it was country like. And so they wanted to sit out there on her front porch a lot of times and just, see the country like neighborhood and get the air, but they couldn't because even sitting down in the chairs on the front porch with spiders crawling on the chairs, underneath the chairs, all of that. So what they decided to do, first they asked Brandon about it. They said, um, this front porch is filthy. I mean, it is filthy as ever. What do you want to do about it? And he acted like from what Shelley said, yeah, I'm getting gay. Hey, it is what it is. And so that's when they said, Shelley said that they said, no, we can't. We have to be because a lot of times since the smoking and the vaping is going on in the house and they couldn't open the windows, and I'll get into why Shirley said they couldn't open the windows in a few minutes, but they couldn't open the windows. So we want to sit out on the front porch and get air, but nobody's going to sit out here in this. So what they decided to do was they decided to go to Family Dollar uh, uh, and get nothing but cleaning supplies. And they cleaned that front porch from top to bottom. They swept, they polished, they wiped down. Um, they got Raid spray. And I mean, and they killed this spider and that spider. Even the neighbors looked over and said to Shelly and her daughter, "Hey, you cleaning over there?" And so Shelly said, "Yeah." And so, they gave looks and thumbs up of approval. And so Shelley said that she believed they did that because they had never seen nobody do that over there. Because the house was, what Shelley said, that house was hard, was terrible. It was terrible. Even the screen door, The screen was starting to bust open. So what Shelly's daughter did was put tape around the screen door to close the screen door all. I mean, that house was filthy. And so when they cleaned it up, by the time they finished sweeping, polishing, wiping down, all of this, and that house looked so much better. It looked almost like a brand new house. It really looked good and it smelled better because Shelley said, and I laugh when she said this, but Shelley said they had an outdoor plug. And so what Shelley and her daughter did was they bought one of those plug-in Glade air fresheners and plugged it into the outside, and the front porch smelled so much better. And so she said that within about a week, because of Vernon and this, mostly Vernon, it was mostly Vernon, because of Vernon, the front porch got the same way all over again. Trash, dirt, spider webs, and all of that. And Shelley said it wasn't so much the young white guy because, again, from what Shelley told me, when he wasn't in his room, the only time that he would come out would be either to do the laundry, and that was every now and then, or to leave out and go from wherever he was going. He said he was going to work, or coming back home. So, uh, it wasn't really him. It was Vernon. It was Vernon, just leaving the porch back dirty again because he didn't care. And Shelly said that they cleaned the inside because the inside of the house, or and they cleaned and they mopped and they wiped down, and even in the kitchen area underneath his table, Vernon's table, where they didn't ever use, but he used it, but they wanted to do it because it would not only benefit them, but it would keep Vernon and the young white male from getting any germs. And they said, Shelley said when they got finished cleaning the inside of the house, that inside of the house looked, I mean, it was in the good. It looked good. And like she did with the front porch, she said they plugged in a Glade plug-in air freshener in the common area, and the smell just reverberated throughout the whole entire house. But then that week, Vernon had the house back dirty again, trash on the floor. And Shelley said she even took his dish rags and dishcloths and washed them. I mean, because of the fact that the dirt coming off of those dish rags and dishcloths, it circulates in the air. And so she washed it, and within a week, that man had, from what Shelley said, had that house back dirty and bacteria filled again. And she said she was angry. Her daughter was angry because of the sweat and the hard work that they did to try to keep that house clean. Because from what Shelley said, her doctor said, if you don't keep your living area clean, what's eventually going to happen, Shelley, is that you're going to end up in the hospital with tubes, you and your daughter. And so Shelley said that was the main reason why her and her daughter decided to clean up both the inside and the outside. But then about a week, it was back dirty again. And she said she knew that it was Vernon who did it because he was the only one who was careless enough to do this. And so even from what Shelley said, even the top of the washing machine and dryer had dirt on it. And they had cleaned that up, but then a week back the same way. So one time after that, they were home and the young white guy, he was not home. And so the young white guy, he was already gone to work or wherever he was going. And so Shelley and her daughter were home and Vernon was at home. And they were in their room watching TV. And then all of a sudden, the lights went off. The lights went off in the whole house because they saw the lights and the television going off in the room. Step into the hallway. The hallway was draped in darkness. The common area was draped in darkness. And so, Shelley said her and her daughter began to ask her, what's going on here? What happened to the lights? And that's when she said that Vernon came out and said, oh, the lights went off. And so Shelley said, yeah, the lights went off in the whole house. I mean, what's going on? And so Vernon told them, oh, It's a blackout in the whole neighborhood. So Shelley found that hard to believe because of the fact that while there'd be a blackout, there wasn't any storm that had happened. It wasn't the type of heat that had happened during the day that would cause a blackout. So she went to the door, front door, opened it up, and looked at the other houses in the neighborhood, which all the other houses in the neighborhood at nighttime, they had their porch lights on. Vernon's house was the only one who didn't have it. So she opened up the door, looked at all the other houses, and she saw their lights were on. And so she knew then, oh, Vernon is lying. So she looked at Vernon and said, no, it can't be in the whole neighborhood because they have their lights on. Their porch lights are on. So then Vernon, he realized he was caught in a lie from what Shelley said. And so Vernon said, okay, well, let me go check. And he went back into his back room, and within a matter of seconds, the lights came back onto the house. And so Shelley said she knew at that moment that he was the one that did it. And so when he came back out into the common area where she was, she said to him, now, Mr. Vernon, you was the one that turned the lights off, weren't you? And he, from what she said, he looked at her and said, oh, no, I didn't. I don't know how the lights got on, that. So I don't know how the lights got on. And so um, that made Shelley, from what Shelley said, that made her and her daughter wary, even more wary of him because of the fact that why did he turn off all the lights? What was he planning on doing? Then, um, on top of that, there was one time where they were in their room and they were watching television, and it was nighttime, so they were laying in bed. Nobody slept in the same bed. It was under one bed in the room, and they heard the doorknob to their room turning, and they knew it wasn't the young white guy because the young white guy, he was gone for the night. And they knew Vernon was home because his car was in the driveway. And so Shelley said that when she and her daughter, when they saw the doorknob turning, Shelley said, hey. And that's when the doorknob stopped. And so she jumped up out of bed and she, uh, unlocked the door and opened it. And she heard scuttering into the kitchen, but she didn't see anyone. And she knew it was Vernon because Vernon was the only one that was home. And even though Vernon had keys to her and her daughter's room, and from what he said, and he had keys to the young white guy's room, Shelley said she felt that instead of using the keys, which would seem like an automatic telltale sign that it was him trying to come in, he decided to try the doorknob first. And so Shelley said that she was lucky that the door was locked, because if the door had not been locked and he had walked in, what was he planning on doing? So with all of this, Shelley said her and her daughter decided to do a little background checking on, who Vernon was, and they found out that Vernon was a felon. Vernon is a felon. He had multiple charges on him. This is what the criminal background check told, from what Shelley said. And so Shelley said she was going by what the criminal background check said, that after checking his name and finding his criminal record online, she found out that, according to what the criminal record said, he had multiple charges for fraud, felonious assault, credit card fraud, and even trying to evade the police, trying to evade the court system, all of these things. And so he had been locked up several times before. And so Shelley said that's why she believed that he had called the living room area the common area, because in prison, the area where the inmates, they come out and they sit down, they watch the television, and they wait for their commissary and all that, they chat with each other, that's called the common area. And so Shelley said she was shocked by that because she had no idea that her and her daughter were living with this man who had multiple charges, especially two for fraud and felonious assault. So, but that made her even more determined to try to find work for her and her daughter, and for her and her daughter to get the hell out of there. And then remember when I said about the window, Shelley and her daughter were told that they can never open the window. And this was the windows in the room with window in the room. Because one of the other window really couldn't open, so it was really one window. And so this was a big blow to Shelley and her daughter because of the fact that they were already smoking and vaping. Well, Vernon was smoking and vaping, but the other guy, the white guy, was smoking. They were already doing that in the house, which was causing their asthma to just go berserk. And then on top of that, because Shelley said this happened on, this summer. And so Shelley said that then on top of that, with it being humid in Virginia, because Virginia faces humidity. It's not like it gets hot and there's no humidity in Virginia. When it's hot, it is super hot than what it really is because of humidity. And so with all of that being the case, um, Vernon would have the air on, but the air would not come through the vents in her and Shelley, me and her and her daughter's room. So with that being the case, they weren't getting any air. They said they would go to bed at nighttime hot and sweaty, and during the day on Saturdays and even on the weekdays when they were be in their room, it felt like a furnace in there. So that Shelley said that she felt the only way that she could get some air was by opening up the window because at least there was some kind of breeze coming through because in right beside her window was kind of like a shaded area from the trees. And so she felt like she could get some kind of air through the window, but Vernon said to never open the window at all. And so they were just forced to stay in that room, not getting any air, because Shelley said she had told Vernon about how her room wasn't getting air from the vent. And again, he just gave some excuse a lot of the one was it, all that he really didn't do anything to fix the problem whatsoever. Because from what Shelley said, he gave the appearance of, I don't care. So they could never open the window. And so what Shelley decided to do was, screw that. I'm going to open the window anyway because me and my daughter, we can't get any air. So she would wait until after he would go to his volunteer work because he didn't have a job. Vernon didn't have a job. He did volunteer work. So she would wait till he would leave. And then that's when she would open up the window. And she said that's when her and her daughter felt. I mean, it felt better. It wasn't as good as having the air coming through their room because, having the window open, even though the breeze was coming in, it was a warm breeze, but at least that was better than nothing. And so they did feel quite better, because the window was open rather than not having the window open at all. And then when Vernon would come home, they would hurry up and close the window back. Then on top of that, Shelley said that he tried to push a $700 electric bill on her, despite the fact that her and her daughter had only been there for 1 week. Um, had only been there for 1 week. He tried to push an electric bill on her. And so Shelley said, there's no way, Mr. Vernon, that we could have this high electricity bill. We've only been here for a week. And there's no way we could have used up that much electricity in a week. Well, come to find out, Shelley and her daughter did some digging and they found out the reason why his bill was $700 was because one, all of his appliances were not energy saver appliances. And by them not being energy saver appliances, they were using up a lot of wattage. He had 3 refrigerators in that house, from what Shelley said. One of the refrigerators was a huge gray refrigerator. And she found out that that was using up tons of wattage. Then he had another refrigerator in the kitchen. Both of those refrigerators were his, were only for him to use. Another refrigerator in the kitchen. And that refrigerator was using up a lot of wattage. Then he had a refrigerator in the common area. Then he had 2 microwaves, but Shelley said she didn't understand why he had a microwave in the common area when there was one right down the kitchen that all the tenants could, her and her daughter and the young white male could use. But he had 2 microwaves. He had a pizza bake oven that Shelley said wasn't even necessary because he already had the stove and the oven right in the kitchen. Then he had TVs in every single part of the house. He had a TV in the common area, a TV in the first small room they ran, a TV in their room that they ran. The young white male, he had a TV in his room, and then Vernon had a TV in his room. So all of those and all of the TVs were not energy saver. They were using up a lot of wattage because they Shelley said that he would keep them plugged, all the TVs plugged in all the time. Then Shelley said he would be in the kitchen instead of him using lamps. And the lamps, if you use a lamp, especially with a low wattage bulb, that saves electricity. But he would come into the kitchen and do his cooking in the kitchen and have these high wattage bulb ceiling lights on. And sometimes he would leave it on for hours. And all of that raised electricity. Then Shelley said she did even more digging and she found out that the reason why his bill was $700 was because of the fact that he hadn't paid his bill in months. I mean, and the whole bill off in months. He was paying some here, some there. And it was just adding and adding and adding up until it got to be $700. And she said she found this out directly from, uh, Shelley said, out in Virginia, they call it Dominion Power. Dominion Energy is one of them. So she found it out directly from them that this is why it was $700 because this man had just he had let it just accumulate, rise and rise. And so Shelley said that she was, pissed off because of the fact that this man was trying to trying to scam her, trying to make her because he said, the $700 bill didn't happen. So you all got here, so something's gonna have to be done. You all will have to do something. You all will have to cop up to something. And so Shelley said that he was trying to get her and her daughter to pay for something that was not of their own doing. It was him. And so then Shelley said that there was times when he would try to turn her and her daughter against the young white male, telling her and her daughter things that the young white male was saying and doing about and to them that didn't happen. And Shelley said that she believed that if he was doing that to her and her daughter, she and her daughter, that no doubt he was doing the same thing to the young white male, telling the young white male things that um, her and her daughter said to and about the young white male that wasn't true. Because at a certain time, the young white male he stopped talking. He would come in and he would say, because from what Shelley said, this young white male, instead of saying good morning every time he saw them, he would say good evening. No, I'm scratching. He would say good morning instead of saying good evening. It could be in the afternoon. He wouldn't say when he saw them in the afternoon, good evening. He would say good morning. And so Shelley one day asked them when they were, still having the greetings. She asked him, why do you say good morning when it's like 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon or 6 o'clock in the afternoon? And so he said, well, because for me, I sleep all day. So when I get up and go to work, it's like morning for me. And so Shelley said she thought that was really cute and clever. And so, and they had a conversation a few times about how the young uh white guy played the guitar until Shelley and her daughter asked, well, sometimes, you bring the guitar out so we can hear you play and all that. And so he said he would. And all of this, Brennan was watching this. And so from what Shelley said is, well, Shelley said this is why she believed that he was trying to play the young white male against them and them against the young white male. Because after a certain amount of time, the young one male, he just stopped talking to them. He would keep his responses short and sharp. And so, and it wasn't like that before. And so Shelley says she believes that Vernon was telling this young white male some things that her and her daughter said about the young male that didn't mean what that they needed him to say. It was lies. And it was to get her and her daughter and the young white male to be against each other. So then she said she decided to get in contact with the neighbors because she wanted to find out more about who this guy was. Because Shelley said she began to feel that this guy is, he could be dangerous. So she began talking to a few neighbors, And when she began talking to a few neighbors, this is how she found out that Vernon, what he had a supposed fiance girlfriend, and the house that Vernon was living in, it was the girlfriend fiance's house. And she moved Vernon in the house with her, and she had her own son. And after moving Vernon in the house, all of a sudden she just got sick. All of a sudden, I don't know, but she got sick and died. Uh-huh. And um after she died, Vernon took over the house and the car because the car that Vernon was driving, according to the neighbors, was not his car. It was the car of the woman that he called his fiance girlfriend. And so after she died, he took it all over. And the son didn't have anything to take over from his mother. So he decided to, Mom, I'm getting out of here. And he moved elsewhere. And so the neighbors said that the son must have seen something for him to just automatically want to get up and move. And I think they said that, I think Shelley said that they said that um, the son moved way across country. So that sent up red flags from what Shelley said and her mind, and her daughter's mind, because now it was getting even more serious. You know, he had this woman that he moved in with, and all of a sudden the woman gets sick and dies, and then he gets everything, you know. So um, there were situations like that. So the last straw for Shelley, on what she said, was when there were times, now this was after Shelley and her daughter, they finally found a job. So they were going back and forth for orientation and all of that. And the several times that they would do that, they would come back in at the end of their day and they would find a lot of the things missing. Um, Jewelry that was expensive that Shelley had, gone. Little personal products, you know, household personal products that they would use every day, gone. Clothes, gone, and several other things that was really prized, you know, possessions of theirs were gone. And they knew it wasn't the young white male that was across the hall from them because, you know, he didn't have a key to their room. The only person who had a and then they knew he, he didn't do it. The only person who had a key to their room was Vernon, a copy of the key. And Shelley said what really made her and her daughter realize that it was Vernon who was doing this because one day they came home and they heard Vernon running out of his back area out to the back deck and the door, the way the because they had a cloth in the door to try to keep out the smoke, the way the cloth was in the door, it was not the way it was before Shelley and her daughter had left, the way they had put it the way before they left. And so they knew that immediately when they had returned home, Vernon had just came their um from their room and had rushed out. And so from that, they knew he was the one who had, you know, he was going into, you know, their room. And Shelley said she was really angry by this. And then on top of that, there were times when Shelley would confront him about this. Now, he was their landlord and they were his tenants. But he would, you know, talk to her and say, "No, baby, it's not like that. No, but," and so Shelley said she found that to be very, number one, disrespectful, number two, inappropriate because they weren't in a relationship together. They weren't friends. They weren't even family. And it wasn't the type of saying baby as if, you know, like here's some Southerners say, "Oh, hey, how you doing, baby?" It wasn't nothing like that. Shelley said that the way he said it was in a type of relationship type of a way. And Shelley said that how she believed that he believes that in his mind that they had established some sort of relationship because of the fact that he was always walking around in his boxer underwear and you know and Shelley was seeing it sometimes along with her daughter. And so that's what Shelley believed that he thought. And so with him going into their room and stealing their things, um, that's when Shelley and her daughters, that's the last straw, because they were already working. They were already working, and at this time they had gotten their first paycheck. And from what Shelley said, they were getting paid good money, boy, good money. And so they said, "All right, that's the last straw. No, we're not doing this no more." And so they started looking for a place to live, and they found this 4-bedroom house, 4-bedroom, 2-bath house, and it was really nice. Um, um, and so the house they were moving to, it was, from what Shelley said, if the people who owned the house, they were renting it to her and her daughter, and they said they trusted her and her daughter to really upkeep the house, and it was a husband and wife, and the house was nice, and it was in their budget. And so Shelley said she had this was at the beginning of the month of September, which she had already paid for. I already paid for September, and it was like the leaving the first week of September, going into the second week, when she decided to tell Vernon, we're gonna be found our own home, we're gonna move out. And she said that's um thus giving him enough time to be able, way before the next month, to be able to, find someone else and all of that. But this was at the time when Shelley said she received a text message from Vernon saying that her rent for October was late, and October hadn't even gotten there yet. And so Shelley said, "Well, how can my rent for October be late when it's still September? As a matter of fact, we're going into the second week of September. I've already paid September. Me and my daughter have already paid September. So you're saying that we're late for October, and October hasn't even gotten here yet." And so he said, "Well, yes, you give, but you still owe. And if you don't pay, you're going to have to pay a late fee." And I think Shelley said the late fee was $500. And so Shelley said, "I'm not paying October's rent before October's rent is due, and a late fee. And even if I were late, which I'm not, there is no late fee of $500. That goes against Virginia's landlord and tenant rules. What are you talking about, Vernon?" And he just kept on trying to hassle her. And I'm not talking to you about this, Vernon. But this conversation is over. And she would hang up. He would call right back. And she wouldn't answer, but he kept calling and texting and called all day while they were at work, until Shelley said, "All right, since he's going to play this game, we are going to get," because she was not planning on leaving until the week after the second week. But with him, he kept calling and calling and calling and calling. She said, "No, this weekend, me and my daughter, we getting the hell out of here." And so Shelley said that they booked the reservation into a grant, because the house wasn't going to be ready until the end of the month. But they decided to book a reservation at, from what Shelley said, the Grand Hyatt. And with that, they decided to get the hell out of there. And she said even on the day that they were leaving, he tried to make his presence menacing, standing all out there and watching her. And there was no need to watch her, because all that Shelley said that her and her daughter had was about 4 totes, and that's it. But and the totes were already sealed from UPS. But he was out there watching, and he said he wanted to, and he asked her the day that he kept calling and texting and calling and texting, and then she told him later that day, "This is it. We've had it. We're leaving. We'll be gone by the weekend." He said, "Well, when I get home this afternoon, I want the keys." And so she said, "You are not getting the keys until we move out of there. We are going to be here for the rest of this week until the weekend. Until the weekend, we have to get back and forth to work. How are we going to get in and out? Like, you're not getting the keys." That he wanted to take the keys so he can lock her out, which when Shelley told me that, I said, what he wanted to do was an illegal eviction, which, if that had been done, you could have sued him and gotten big money for it. And so Shelley said that you know, what she decided to do was to have the police to be on standby. And she called the police later on that night, and the police told her, "Well, we know who this man is because of his criminal background. If he does anything wrong, give us a call and we will race out there because we're not having that. This is Virginia." And so um, Shelley said on the day that her and her daughter moved out, they had two men to help her and her daughter to get their things out, which she said that she was glad to have because when Vernon saw the two men, that's when he cowered up. He cowered it up, and he like a pet with the tail between the legs. He decides to go back in his room and he didn't come back out anytime any you know until they left. And so they got their stuff out of there, and the police were on standby, and then they left. So with all of that being said, um, Shelley said she wants people to know her experience, and this is why she wanted me to tell the story, well, tell the experience. This is why she wanted me to tell the experience as well of what she went through. She wanted people to know who this man was and is all about because his ad is still on Furnish Finder. And Shelley said when she first saw her and her daughter first saw the ad, he had in his ad no pets. Now he has pets, and now he's charging a $150 application fee. And so she said that she believes the reason why he's saying that pets are now allowed because most women they have pets, they got little dogs, cats, or what have you. And so that will be an easier way to draw women in because Shelley says she believes this guy's a predator. He is a predator who preys on women. That's what he is. And so and the neighbors, talking to the neighbors, they said they suspect that as well. But it's very little that they can do because I mean they're just neighbors and not like the police or anything. But so, Shelley said that she wants the disclaimer out there that if anyone is looking for a place to rent, especially women, um, to not rent any type of place or space or room from this man, Vernon James. And she asked her if I could, because she sent me photos of a photo of the house, or photos of the house, and the car, and so asked if I could, post it in the video, and she said I could, and so I'll show you that at the end of this video here. And so if you come across this man's ad on Furnish Finder, and you see this man's house on Furnish Finder, whether you are a male or female, and if you're in the Virginia area, this is a place where no one should be. This man has a criminal record. He rents out rooms in a house that is totally beyond, I mean, it is beyond disgusting with all types of dirt and filth and bacteria. Even the refrigerator in the common area, as he calls it, even that doesn't work properly because if you either have to turn it off or turn it down to such a low degree that it doesn't get the food cold. Because if you turn it any way up just a little bit to get the food cold, it'll present forth this loud humming sound because the refrigerator is broken. Shelley and her daughter found that out because they called around to some refrigeration places and they told of the details and they were told, yeah, that sounds like the refrigerator is broken. Now, how did the refrigerator look? And Shelley said that she took photos of the refrigerator and even the make and model, which was still listed on a sticker inside the refrigerator. And Shelley said that they were, that's how they found out that the refrigerator is indeed broken because it's old. And so, even the refrigerator doesn't work. And if you are a female, you go in the kitchen, he'll sit at the table and you'll watch her every move. And then if he's not sitting at the kitchen table, he has cameras watching in the kitchen. And then in the common area, in the laundry room area, even on the front porch. So you are never feeling, hey, I have some privacy because he's watching everywhere. And so Shelley, and this is what Shelley said. And so Shelley said that she wants people to know that Vernon James does not care about anyone. He doesn't care about his tenants, and he doesn't even care about the young white male who was a tenant in his home. And Shelley said she said that this young white male, he was leaving the 1st of November, and so that means all three of Vernon's rooms are going to be available. And so Shelley said that she wants people to know, especially females, to not rent from this man because he will lie. He will tell you he doesn't have pets, and he does. And if you have health problems, that's going to hurt you. He will say, oh, the house is clean. The house is a wonderful house, wonderful room. And that's a lie. He will have you spied on all the time. It is not from him himself peeking around corners and sitting at tables watching you. It's from the cameras. He will cut off the lights in the house, and there's no telling what he's planning on doing once the lights are off in the house. And he will steal out of your room. He'll even Shelley said there was even times when he would steal her mail. The mail that she would have come into the house. A lot of times he would have it. A lot of times she would get it, and she said you could tell they would have been stinged to open, Billy. And so he will steal your mail. This man is, from what Shelley said, this man is not safe for people to live around. He's not. And Shelley said that he she is going to have him investigated because she believes that is a predator. And so knowing this, women should not seek any type of rental from this man. He will sound very real. When you inquire about his room or rooms, he will sound like he's a professional. This man is a street bum. That's what he is. He came from government housing when he was released from jail. He's nothing. He had nothing. This is why he married. Well, he didn't marry, but this is why he had this girlfriend and he moved in with her. That house, everything in the house, the car, it all belonged to her. But see, with him knowing how to fraud and scam and scheme, you know, that's how he got that house and that car. And the car is not up to date, but he will walk around and act like he's somebody. He will walk around and act like he's somebody from Capitol Hill, somebody from that's living in a high quality community or neighborhood. This man is nothing. So you have to be very careful in what he says because he's a pro. He's a pro. He knows how to scheme. He knows how to scam. He knows how to do to land him back in jail or to land him in jail. We would go down to the mailbox. Not we, was Shelley said that she would go down to the mailbox and and in the mailbox, the mailbox is sitting on the street. Uh, she said she would find all kind of checks inside the mailbox, the different people that came to different people. And what he would do, he would take those checks and bring them inside the house. He's already been convicted of scam and fraud. And so Shirley believed that somehow or another he's going to do that again. So what Shirley is saying to each and every one of you out there, especially you women, don't fall for his scam. He's going to sound like, oh, this man is real. There's nothing wrong with this man. When you go there and see the house is going to look clean. The floors are going to look clean. But move the furniture around. Look underneath the bed, and you will see. And he's charging $150 now for application fee, and it's ridiculous. You're going to a room, $150 for application fee, plus what he's charging for rent. One thing Shelley said, Shelley begged him, Mr. Vernon, please do a check out on me and my daughter. Find out if we've ever been arrested. Find out if we, do a background check on us, and then some. Please, Mr. Vernon, do this. He wouldn't do it, and then later it was stated by the a person of the law. The reason why he didn't do a background check on any of you all is because of the fact he knew that he had a criminal record. One thing Shelley said, and I agree with her to the fullest, he's charging $150 for application fee. He is the one that decides, not furnish finders. He is the one that decide, I want this person here. That $150 that you give is going directly to him. It's not for any application fee. He's not going to do any background check on anyone. That money is for him. This is how he makes his money. This man is all about money and all about how he can get a female, how he can get a woman. And because he was surprised to the fact that when coming into the house, Shelley and her daughter, that he was surprised that her daughter was with her. And Shelley had to remind him, I told you on the telephone that it was myself and my daughter. So what we're saying to each and every one of you out there, and let me not forget before I go on any further to end this conversation. Shirley stated that while living there, now this white guy that stayed directly across the hall from her, he was gone majority of the time. When he would come in, he'd come in and he would come in and go to bed and sleep, and then he would get up and he would go to work. He didn't even eat there. But every now and then, Shelley said that she would smell cooking from his room, not often, and she knew then that he had a hot plate in his room because he didn't want to go into the kitchen area to cook on the stove. But then Shelley said this, that when she was alone in the house, her and her daughter, this man would bring in people, a female and a male, with two males and a female, and would bring them in. And she said when she looked at them, you can tell they were street people. And she said her and her daughter got on pins and needles there because finding out his background and what type of person he was and where he came from and where he was, he would bring these three people into his house. And then one female, would come from his room in the back and come to the what he called the common area and would just sit there and just for about maybe about 5, 10 minutes. Then she would get up and go back into Verna's quarters where he stayed at in the back room. And so, what Shelley is saying, people, to make a long story short, you better be very careful of these rooming houses. These men, they are releasing men from prison and they are going and they're trying to make money. And the only way they figure they can make money is to get with a woman who has something. And Shirley said, because this man was always up in her face when she turned around and he was there. And that's why he went into her room, her and her daughter's room, because he wanted to find out what she had. Well, if I could find out some money or sort of thing. Shirley said this is what she believes that this man was doing. But she kept her bank book and her bank cards and all the money on her person, not in that room. And so this man is looking for the right type of woman. He can scam again as he did with his first girlfriend. And he stated his girlfriend was his fiance. They were never married. That's why the son got out of there. Because he saw a lot of things. The neighbors saw a lot of things. And when we started inquiring of the neighbors, we said his wife. They said, no, that wasn't his wife. That was a woman that allowed him to come inside. And then after he came inside, the woman died. And so, what we're saying to make a long story short is this. You better be careful out there, you females, and even you males who are weak and vulnerable. You better be careful. We got scammers on the loose. We got people who have been in prison for years or, that are on the loose. They're trying to make easy money. They will talk the way that they feel that you want them to talk. And this is what he did to us, Shelly and her daughter. He brought in that smooth talk, calling Shelly baby. This is what I think, oh, baby, it's not like that, baby, baby, baby. And she had to set him straight. She never, for what Shelly states, and I believe Shelly, just like P.S. Montgomery believes her. Shirley said that she never seen this man a day before in her life. She never had any conversation with this man before in her life. The only conversation she had with him before she moved inside that house was when she called to inquire about the room. So young females, regardless of how old you are, you better be careful because Shirley said that once her and her daughter was there, they were getting sick, not only from the cats, but they were getting sick. The food is no telling what he's put inside your food. Shelley said that one time she made a pot of soup, and she said, when she made it, the soup was delicious. But then the next time her and her daughter went to eat the soup tastes different, but she didn't think nothing of it. But she ended up being sick, her and her daughter. So you have to be careful, people. We're living in a time of life where people are getting evil. They want your money. If you can get a hold of your bank book, your bank card, and what have you, and cause you to leave this world, this man is the one that will do it. He will do it. He came from the street when he met this woman, and they said that after this woman let him in her house, this woman got sick. And eventually he died. She died. So what I am saying, Billy RL Real Life, if you see the ad on Furnished Finder, you see that ad, you see the room, be forewarned. Do not apply. This man, if he knows that you're a woman, he's going to talk the talk and he's going to walk the walk. Be prepared. Do not enter those doors. We're saying this is because of what Shelley stated to us. And we believe, and I believe every bit of what Shelley has stated. Because when she was talking through the intercom of the phone call that she made to me, I sat back and I analyzed everything. And everything that she was saying was nothing but the honest to goodness facts, truth, and she presented to me the knowledge is true. It's true. And with her doing all of that, she has the power. And this man knew it, but he knew that she had something that he wanted. And so I'm saying to you once again, if you see this house, don't go to it. I don't care what $150 application fee for a room. Now he's saying that he's accepting pets. And he knows this man is a straight man. And he knows that when you see people walking along the street, it's females that have pets. He knows this. So the thing that I really RL am saying to each and every one of you out there, beware. Use your common sense. Allow the power that's within you to have you to understand by opening up your third eye to see. This man is a con, he's a scam, he's no good. If he can get you naked, then he has you. Be Just don't move there. There are a lot of other rooms where there are women and there are professional people that are renting out rooms. There are people, check the backgrounds on these people. This man has a criminal record as long as his arm. The neighbors knew. Shelley would go and talk to the neighbors, and I believe them. From what Shelley states, yes, Shelley's. I believe, and I read her. I read her, and I knew she was telling the truth. So the address to this place is, and I'm going to let you know exactly what it is, what Shelley gave to me. It's a private home. Well, naturally, it's a private home because it's not his. It's what he got from his girlfriend after he moved inside and scammed the maid away where he could take over everything that she had after her demise. The address is 616120 Varina, as in Victor, A as in apple, R as in rabbit, I as in Ian, N as in nation, A as in alpha. Point Lane, Point, Lane, Henrico, Henrico, Virginia, and the zip code is 23231. Let me repeat that back again. 6120 Verena Point Lane, Henrico, Virginia, 23231. And his name is Vernon James. He's a heavy set man. He wears glasses. Um, he's on Furnish Finder today. And from what she says, from what Shelley says, that's a terrible place to live at. The picture that you all will see was taken at the time of when this woman, who he calls his fiance, and she never was his fiance, from what Shelley says, that's the picture that was taken by and from her before before her demise. So you look at that picture. Now, all of this is from Shelley now. You look at that picture and you think, oh, this is a fine house. This is nice. And but it's not like that. The house is shabby for what Shelley says. The railings are wood. The wood is deceasing. Uh, we've already told you what Shelley has stated, so I'm not going to go back into it again. But the car that Shelley sent to me the photo, you will see that that car is the car that his girlfriend had, and he took it over. The son, I've already told you about the son. The son was younger, but he left. So people, females and new males. And the white guy is going to leave. I think I've already told you this from what Shelley stated. He's going to leave the 1st of November. He will not be there. So stay away from this house, people. If you have any sanity within your brain, stay away from here. Because once you go inside that man's house, except any of his rooms, you are going to get sick. You will be dominated by him. And there's nothing that you can do about it until you come to your senses and realize it. And you can come to your senses by not entering the doorway of his house. Cameras everywhere. This man is mentally insane. And you do have people that are walking around driving cars that are mentally unstable, but they still operate. So that's the thing that I have to say, because Shelley wanted me to say this. And I thank Shelley for allowing, thinking of me to be able to say this. And Shelley, I hope that I have said the right thing for what you have given me. And but people, beware. Beware. If you go into that house to live, what are those rules? You're living at your own risk, because the sheets that Shelley and her daughter slept on, she said it was dried blood. Those sheets had been on that bed for days, and blood. Who did he? What happened? What happened? So this is the thing that we want to say to you from Shelley. P.S. Montgomery's friend, and she's now my friend. I told her to keep me posted as to what, when, why, and how anything new comes up. And so don't move there, people. Don't move there. And I know what Shelley has said is the truth because I listened to her. I saw her. And everything she said was nothing but the truth. This man is he's something. And so once again, this is me, Billy RL, real life. Don't move there. There are other rooms that you can go to. There are other bed and breakfasts that you go to, that you can go to. This man wants money, and he wants a piece of the action from whomever uh, decides to rent from him. And you males, if you're vulnerable, if you're not a strong, built up muscle person, don't go there. Once again, this is me, Billy RL, real life. Now I'm going back out to my team and do the rest of my hour investigation. Give me some comments down here so that I can take back and give to Shelley. Peace, love, love, peace, but most of all, power. You have it, people. You have it within you. Exercise your power. Use your power. Obtain your power so that you will be able to know who the devil, Lucifer, Satan, and the enemy is. Power. WRIO, real life.